Hey, everybody, it's Jeff here once again with the Freedom Nation podcast. And I am really excited today to have a friend on that's going to talk a little bit about what that business exit. So, this episode is really going to be for those of you that are out there listening, you own businesses and you're figuring out what that exit is like. We've had some of those conversations in the past on here, but I think this will be a really good conversation today to really talk about what that exit looks like and the best way to do it. And so I have Saud Juman on. He's out of, I think, Ontario, correct?
Yep, that's right. I'm just outside of Toronto.
Awesomeness. So why don't we kick off? Tell us a little bit about your story. How do you get to where you are today?
Okay. The bulk of my story that I think would be applicable to your listeners is my last company, which was a healthcare technology company. It was called Policy Medical, very niche company. I ran that for just under 18 years.
Oh,
And that is what I did for that entire almost two decades. Build that company, bootstrapped it from bootstrap to exit or successful exit. And being an entrepreneur is, I guess, wired into me from a very young age. I had little fledgling businesses, even as early as 12. I had other businesses prior to the software company, but the software company really was that first meaningful business that I was able to grow. And throughout my entrepreneurial arc of the smaller businesses to the larger business, the software tech company, exiting and really owning your exit has been a recurrent theme that I've realized that that's been part of my little secret sauce.
okay. Let's talk a little bit about that own the exit. So what do you mean by own your exit?
It's a term I came up with post exit in 2018 when I sold the software company. And I was having a lot of entrepreneurs come to me for coaching, being an advisor, a mentor, that type of stuff. And I'm not really a social media person, even back then, even now. I'm not posting, I'm not taking videos of myself. But even while I was building my company, I was pretty heads down. Even when it was sold, the Toronto tech community came out and said, "Who are you? Who is this? What's this company? Oh, we thought it was an
Where
American
did you come
company.
from?
Where did you come from?" Right. And, I wasn't a big networker or anything else like that. When people were coming to me to ask me for advice, I realized that the way we did the exit was different. And the way I've been exiting up and moving up in my career has been a little bit different. And a friend of mine helped me put some words to that philosophy, which is own your exit. And the
Mm,
essence of it really is it's better, in my opinion, to pay attention to the little tiny clues a business and life gives you along the way in terms of when you need to move on to the next chapter. And the earlier you pay attention to those clues, the better, because then you can architect the most meaningful exit possible in a proactive way instead of reactively having to hurry and get out of a situation and then thinking about where you're going to move to next. So my philosophy, I realized retrospectively since I was younger, was to proactively exit and own the exit and architect things. And a lot of that comes with paying attention to these little clues, like the little things that happen in your business or your life that you'd be like, that was weird. Just shrug it aside and go. Because
mhm.
those little clues, based on my experience, get louder and bigger until it could be something drastic in your life, right? And then you can't own the exit at that point.
Yeah. So was that something that you had coaching on, or was it just something you developed as you were going, or how did that come about?
Great question. A lot of it was instinctive,
Okay.
right? Growing up, but I will say my mentors historically have had a big influence in crafting my mindset and at times helping me find the vocabulary for what it is I'm doing. Because there's power in intuitively doing stuff, but then there's greater power in being aware of the thing that you're doing and then having words attached to it. So I've had mentors over time, either through their example or just through their coaching of me, guide me to be like, hey, this is something really great that you're doing. And then also there's the other side of mentorship, which is this is something horrible you're doing. You need to stop that. You need to change that. Right. So I think that mentorship has really helped quite a bit.
Yeah. And in those cases, did you find mentors or did you hire mentors?
I didn't think we would talk about this today, but I'll make it quick. I have a little bit of a mentorship formula that
Okay.
came out of a random occurrence in life. So when that last business, that software company, was midway through the almost 18 years, right? It's
Okay.
like year 8 or 9 or so. We were flatlining. We
Mm.
were pretty much, I had built a lifestyle business up, right?
Okay.
So a lifestyle business, for those that don't know, and Jeff, I'm sure you know what that is. It's a business that's providing enough money for the owner or the founder, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But what I got into that business was to make a huge exponential impact, not just in money, but in healthcare. So I had built a lifestyle business. It was flat net lining. It was under $1 million in revenue. So I had a little house. I'd gotten married. I had a minivan and it was paying the mortgage
Yeah.
and just everything was just leveling out just so every month. And I went to a barbecue with my wife and at a friend's house. And then she came inside from the backyard of this person's house. I was just inside in the living room. And she said, "You need to go out there." I was like, "Why?" She goes, "There's a guy out there. He's weird, just like you." I'm like, "What makes him weird?" He goes, "He's an entrepreneur. He's just talking entrepreneur stuff. Just go out and just talk to him."
My
So I
people.
went out there. Yeah, yeah. So it was a fellow entrepreneur and we became friends from then even until now. We're really close friends. And he had just exited.
Okay.
We were really young. And over time, during that conversation, I said, "What was the biggest X factor for you?" Right? We've had the internet even back then. We can go search up a lot of basic business knowledge, basic entrepreneurial knowledge. But what's something that is not so easily accessible in terms of information that made a huge impact for you? And
Yeah.
he said, "Mentorship." So I said, "Tell me about mentorship." And he described his mentorship experience. And then together, him and I put words to it and we're like, "Oh, this is a bit of a formula." So the formula goes like this. I searched for 2 mentors at the same time.
Okay.
I searched for an industry specific mentor that was
Got it.
specific to my industry. And I made a list of 3 people, right? So they had, and I was really specific, by the way. So without boring your listeners with my previous sector, I got this specific. I wanted somebody in software tech.
Good.
Within software tech, I want them within healthcare. Within healthcare, I realized I want them within selling software to hospitals in the United States. And then I'm like, you know what? I want somebody that did all of that for hospitals, but within healthcare compliance that sold a business or has a net worth for at least $150 million.
Oh, that's hyper
So
specific.
it was, and there were 3 people I found, right?
Wow.
And
That's
then I
awesome.
was looking for a general business mentor, and I wanted that mentor to have built something over $500 million. I was just dreaming large, and I wanted them to be in Toronto, and I wanted them to be a general business mentor, and I was more specific about the personal characteristics because the formula goes like this: if they were to ever meet and work together to mentor me, we all have egos.
Yeah.
So the industry specific mentor, his ego would be checked by the sheer vastness of the general business mentor's empire,
Yeah.
right? The general business mentor's ego would be checked by the sheer industry specific knowledge that this other person has from my business,
Nice.
right? And that's to continue this would be an entire another hour, but just to sum it up, I found those mentors and they were instrumental in terms of helping me in my business. And I've continued to use that 2-prong formula from then and until now in different ways. In fact, I have a free PDF. I documented this. It's like a 12-page PDF of how to find a mentor and the exercises and everything else. And I've given it to my mentees and everything else because I got tired of explaining how to do it. So now I'm like, I just email the PDF. They
Here
follow
it goes.
they find their mentor. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. That's, you know what? That is probably the most organized way that I've ever heard somebody find a mentor. And I love your approach. You've got to have the industry specific and you got to have the one that's a little bit more general and can take you to that level that you want to be. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
how did you end up finding, like in your example with your business, how did you end up finding like those 3 people?
So I Googled and I searched, right?
Okay.
So I found some names. That was for the industry specific mentor. For the general business mentor, that's still my mentor today. That friend I made at the barbecue, that was his mentor. So
Nice.
he said, I think you should talk to him. So I spoke to him and we became a longtime venture mentee and friends still to this day.
Mm.
The other individuals, what ended up happening was, and that criteria, by the way, one of the things I said for the industry specific mentor, I was fine with them being anywhere in Canada or the United States.
Okay.
My business was tethered to the United States. So at the end, we had 3,000 hospitals across the United States that were using our product.
Nice.
So it became quite large. But I told myself, if I got the phone call from one of these three guys that they were in, let's say, Phoenix, Arizona, Starbucks tomorrow, and they said, I got 10 minutes to talk to you, I would find my way there somehow. Right. And back then I had very little money and we had 2 young kids and all this other stuff. So that's how driven I was to actually find. And the guy that became my mentor actually found out about an evening event happening in Silicon Valley that he may or may not have been at the night before. And it was one of those after work events that's for people that live in Silicon Valley.
Sure.
Right. I flew from Toronto, went to that event, was told he's not going to be there because he had just exited his company. I was quite deflated. But then at the end of the event, he walked in, right? And I just walked right up to him, and I'm not a big networker. And there was obviously a big crowd around him because he just exited his company. And finally, I pushed my way in. I'm like, hi, I'm Saud. He said, so how can I help you? I said, I live in Toronto. I flew here. I fly back tomorrow. You're on the list. I need you to be my mentor. Right? And he's like, whoa. Are you stalking me? Right. And then that's how we connected.
Yeah.
And we became so close from a business perspective that he stopped being my mentor because he became part of the business.
Nice.
And became what's known in that industry as a chief medical officer, which is the head of product. Right? So he became a head of product. And the reason I say this to anybody listening to this, the reason he stopped being my mentor, and this was an issue him and I had at that time that we have to work out, was I told him, I said, you're no longer my mentor because you're now on the cap table, right? Meaning I've given you equity. So once there's an exchange of equity, money, or something like that, mentor-mentee relationship isn't pure anymore. It's not the same, right? You're now partners. It's different. So some people, they mix it up. They'll hire a business coach and say, that's my mentor. Like, no, that's not your mentor. That individual is there because you're paying them, right? It's different.
That's awesome. And that's, what an awesome example. I just absolutely love that. So now let's fast forward a little bit. You've exited from your businesses. At that point, what did you start doing from a perspective of what do you do for a living today?
When do we go back to just when I exited? Because I am part of a few entrepreneur groups, but one of the entrepreneur groups I'm part of, the guy that runs, it's a conference for like 100, 200 people that happens every year. So he ended up calling me and he said, a lot of people think you're weird. I'm like, why am I weird? Right. And within that group that year, 2018, there were a few of us, I think 4 of us that had large exits. And he said, there's so also exited and people know about that. Right. And we just have the conference and a lot of people spoke to you at the conference as well. And they just think you're a little bit different. I'm like, why? He's like, let's sold his business. Right. He went and he got a collection of Ferraris. I was like, okay. All right.
Whatever.
Maybe like Ferrari. Yeah. And then somebody else started their business, the next business, like immediately, which in my experience is never good.
No.
Once you exit, you should take some space as much as your resources can afford within reason, without becoming lazy and complacent, to have some space between the 2 chapters. Right. And then the third person waited a couple months and then took the war chest of money that he made from the sale and bought back his company. And I said, okay. And the individual side, he goes, and you saw it. He goes, you have just gone on to just spend time with your kids and your wife. And I started exploring everything non-entrepreneurial.
Okay.
I would go to a local park down by Lake Ontario near to my house. And I'd be meditating there and things like that because I'd meditated for a long time. So that's not a new thing that I was doing. But I noticed these people taking care of the flowers and everything else. So I actually tried to get a job taking care of the gardens there. I mean, it's not worth my bike, but I realized you have to have a horticulturalist degree. Like I have to go to school for 4 years.
No, thank you.
But so, no, thank you. So I was exploring everything non-entrepreneurially, right? for almost 2 years. And then I decided I wanted to get back in the game. During that time, I was investing in a bunch of companies. I was advising, and I still do that stuff. There's a portfolio that I have of companies that I've invested in. But I realized that I don't want to be in the sidelines. I want to be in the game. And one of my general business mentor, he told me, he's like, when you're ready to get back into it, he said, at this stage of the game, you should not be thinking about the product first or the service first or the idea first. Because you need to find the partner or partners that you can mastermind with. Napoleon Hill asked masterminding to come up with the actual idea. So that's what I started looking for first. So I found those partners, and then we came up with an idea, and now we have a software as a service company within the supply chain warehousing space that we started. So it's early day, self-funded. So we're not going to raise any money. We're just going to take care of it ourselves. We just finished building our product. I'm very simple when it comes to tech. Some of the younger guys that come to me for advice, I still don't understand how they do things. They're building like something just good enough to raise some money, and then a little bit more to raise some more money. And when they talk to me, I tell them, I'm like, I'm done building it. Like we just finished it in February. And they're like, what are you going to do next? I'm like, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to try to sell a lot of it. Right. I'm like, oh man, that's
wow. Totally new concept. What are you talking about? Trying to sell. And then get it in the hands of, get it in the hands of your end users who can then help you develop it more.
Exactly. So that's a big focus right now with the bulk of my time.
Nice.
And in between that, I've got a small coaching program and things like that for other entrepreneurs.
Nice. Very cool. What's new in your world that besides the new company, anything new over and above that?
Business-wise or personal?
Either one, whatever you want to talk about.
I will say that while I had that last business, I did a lot of public speaking. So I would strategically speak at healthcare related conferences within my space, but I would never talk about my company or the product or the service. I would just simply tell my entrepreneurial story to healthcare executives, because a lot of them were high paid, high stress healthcare hospital executives in the United States that were losing their health, losing their relationships, whatever, at the sake of their career. And I would just tell my story of how I got to where I was at that point. But post-exit, I realized I did a good service to those people, but I did a disservice as well, because some of my beliefs have changed post-exit as well in terms of health, right? So I used to preach that I only need 4 hours of sleep, because I used to only sleep 4 hours a night. That's how I was able to do all this stuff. And now I realize how wrong I was, right? So some of the things that changed for me is I used to be, I played college basketball, and I used to do martial arts at a fairly high level, so pretty athletic. But what's changed for me is I now view entrepreneurship as my sport, and the people that I coach them accordingly. So I said, look, this is your sport, so you need to train accordingly for it. So aside from all the business stuff we do, I also preach to them that you need to sleep correctly. You need to work out correctly, right? You need to eat correctly, etc., for entrepreneurship. And I had a great mentor post-exit. So he is from the basketball world. He was Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan's coach, their fitness trainer for their entire career, a gentleman by the name of Tim Grover. So I was fortunate enough to have some mentorship from him during that time. And I love the game of basketball. So while we were mentoring, I was just picking his brain about Michael Jordan. So he sent me this old book that he wrote a long time ago with Michael's entire workout. So one day in our sessions like this, he saw that I just looked really worn down. And he said, why do you look like this? So I've been trying to work out. He goes, you're trying to work out, right? I said, yeah, I finished it. I'm on the second time through it. He goes, you're an idiot. I said, why? He said, he's the one that planted the seed. He said, those workouts are for professional athletes, which you're not a, right? He goes, and even for professional athletes, that's for the best of the best. Which
this is the Michael Jordan's. Right? This is Michael Jordan's workout. So then he's the one that planted a seed. He said, look, he goes, you're an entrepreneur. He goes,
you can't work out 2.5 hours a day. He said, you got to pick your few workouts throughout the week, keep them real short, make them count. And that's when I got to think, okay, I'm going to organize my life, like all the things I do health wise to complement this sport of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And that's really allowed me to hit another level of focus and efficiency. And not just the rocket ship, which is the new business, but
Yeah.
also like that's my main business, but also all the other ventures that we've been able to start and the investments and everything else, right? It's allowed me to be hyper focused, hyper alert, and a lot more energy. A lot of people I coach, I look at their lives and I'm like, "Look, this is a tweak you've got to make." So a tweak could be, you know what? You should wear some blue light blocking glasses like I have at this time onwards. And I do a time audit with the people that I coach. So I make them fill out like a piece of paper that shows me how they actually spend their time. I'm like, nah, you're not going to watch Netflix anymore and wind down at night from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Like, but I need them. Like, no, you don't. I'm like, just get rid of that stuff. So like little tricks like that, then we transmute that additional energy into entrepreneurship.
But it sounds to me like you've also found that balance too, that work-life balance around it, where you've stayed focused on your family too, on top of all of that, versus the entrepreneur that's just totally focused on their business and all the other pieces are really not there.
You're right. And I do want to acknowledge that, like what I'm about to say comes from a place of privilege.
Yeah.
So there's some privilege here. So in entrepreneurship success, there's a lot of preparedness. There's a lot of hard work. There's a little bit of maybe intellect that you get, but there's also a lot of luck and timing as well. You know what I mean? Like I sold my business in 2018. If it didn't happen for 18 more months and I had it during the pandemic, it would have been game over for me. So like, look at that timing. Like that amongst many others I can think of that I had no control over. But right now, my biggest focus in life are our 4 children. That's my biggest focus. And even the people that I coach, I will ask them, let's say I was coaching you, Jeff. I'd say, hey, what's your championship right now? Like, what's the big championship you're chasing? And when I had my last business, it really wasn't my wife and kids. It was the sale of that business. That was my championship. Right now, it's the 4 kids and everything falls underneath. But that's because I'm in a place right now where I'm working for motivation that is not monetary. The monetary piece is not the primary motivator anymore at this point for me. It's important, right? I'm not doing stuff pro bono, but it's not as it was before. So that allows me to say, oh, my championship for my 4 kids, and I'm legitimately backing up with my schedule.
Yeah. But it is, you gave yourself the right to be able to do that. But not everybody, you talked about the one guy that, or like really 2 of the other ones that exited, and one went off and started another business. The other one bought his other business back. It's like they had nothing else in their lives at that point that they could do it. You had that option to say, you know what, I'm just going to slow down and stop for a second. And that's the thing I respect about you. You took that time. I exited from one of my businesses last year. And it's funny because I was so used to that go. And literally, it's been 9 months of me really stopping, reflecting, looking about what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, what my passions were. And I would not have done it differently. I don't feel like I was lazy. I was sitting here reading 8, 9 books a week, just literally consuming information, really trying to figure out, okay, what is this? What is the design for my life going forward? And I think people don't do that enough. Even though you didn't become a horticulturist and get your job in the parks, I think spending that time there helped you to get to where you are today.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just a wonderful story. I'm just so excited to hear where you're going with the new business. I'm excited to hear where that goes, and we'll have to circle back. But let's transition now to the fast 5 questions. You ready?
All right, let's do it.
All right. First one, you wake up in the morning, business is gone. You have your connections and your knowledge. You have $500 in your pocket, laptop, computer, place to live. What do you do first?
First thing I do is I'm going to try to figure out how to use my resources, the laptop and the $500. How can I put that as seed money into starting something really small to start a business? So it could be And I'm thinking that's something like before I do some mentorship with a supermax prison in South Carolina
Okay.
where, and sometimes I talk to inmates that are leaving, going out there. So some of these guys, they're looking to buy a weed whacker or a lawnmower
Yeah.
because they've identified that where they're going to live, they're going to start a lawn cutting business. So if I'm starting back from ground zero, I may be looking for a lawnmower.
Yeah. And can easily buy some kind of equipment for $500 and get your business up and running. I love that idea.
Yeah. And grow it into $1,000.
There you go. What's the biggest business mistake you've ever made?
That was an easy one because I talk about it. Business mistake I made was I happen to be married. So this goes out to anyone that has a significant other in their life. And when you're that close in a relationship like that, a mistake I made, and I see it over and over again, and I try not to make that mistake. I probably can talk to my wife, maybe I'm still making it, but she would have given me perspectives and advice at that closeness over and over again. And I didn't listen to it.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to go out and hire other people and everything else. And then I realized that what she was saying all along was correct. And because of that realization, the mistake is even more compounded because what I didn't do in the past was give her the recognition and respect for the impact she had on the business.
Yeah.
Because she was never in the boardroom and wasn't on the cap table officially and everything else. But, she was probably the biggest advisor and helper along the way in many ways. And it was after the fact that I realized that. And I'm playing catch up in terms of letting her know how important it was, her impact was. So anybody listening to this, just start turning the tide the other way if you're doing that right now.
Yeah, it's fun. I actually work with my spouse. So she's a major part of running our businesses. And I've said it all along. She was the one that was in the background and I brought her in to actually run operations, and she's a genius at running operations. Sometimes your best and most loyal. I've said it all along. She's the best partner I've ever had. She's the only one that's really ever worked out from a partner standpoint. Sometimes look at the other person that you live with in your house as a good advisor,
absolutely.
and certainly maybe somebody that could be working with you in the business. What's a good book that you would recommend for our audience?
I'm not going to recommend a business book. I used
Okay.
to do that in a lot of my previous chapter. I would say the book that I would go back to is The Alchemist. Yeah, great book. I could sit here and tell you to go read Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, for obvious reasons, blah, 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 right? That's too easy. But The Alchemist, if you haven't read it, it's one of the greatest books of all time, fictional.
Okay.
But there are a lot of parables in that about going within yourself to find the answers that you need. Because a lot of times we go outside looking for answers or validation, but we need to quiet the noise, stop reading so many books, taking in so much information, get quiet, and then see what we are actually saying to ourselves. So The Alchemist is a really great book about that. It's one of those books you could reread every year and find something.
Nice. And that was Paulo Coelho, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So we'll put a link to that down in our show notes page. What's a good tool that you use every day in your business?
Tool. I'm very anti-tech, even though I make my living from tech. So that's that I'm trying to think because by tool, I know what you mean, what I use technologically.
It doesn't have to be
regular-
tech. I've had every answer from a yellow legal pad and a pencil to super high tech stuff.
You know what it is? It comes down to the biggest tool in my business is me and my energy and my health.
Yeah.
Without giving you some hokey answer of, I focus on my health and that's really important. That's my tool. I do use a tool to monitor my health, a piece of technology. So I have no stake in this company. I'm just a meager customer, but I happened to be one of their first customers 5 years ago. So there's a little, next to my watch, there's a little black strap here. And there's no interface on it because to see the data, you have to go in on your iPhone or whatever, Android or whatever. It's called Whoop. WH, came out of Harvard Medical School. I just came across it because I saw LeBron James' trainer talking about it 5 years ago. I'm like, what is this? It is actually certifiably, you can check it out, one of the best consumer tools for non-professional athletes to use that tracks your sleep and your strain. And that's really important to me because when I wake up in the morning, I can see my sleep score and whatever else in terms of that. But it actually is the best tool in the market to tell you how hard you should work today.
Yeah.
And it factors in yesterday's physical strain and emotional strain. So when I was going through my exit, I wasn't really working out a lot. 'Cause
Yeah.
exiting is like a whole other thing. That 7 months was craziness. But my strain every day was so high
Mm.
because it's monitoring all these metrics in my heart. So it knows the amount of stress that I'm under. So that this little tool helps me that I can look at that every morning. And then I'm like, okay, this is where it is. I'm like, oh, I had this crazy workout plan, but it's telling me not to. So I will adjust accordingly.
Yeah. That's a cool tool. I've got to look into that. Great idea. I'm the same. I come from the 2 Watch Club here. Final question. What is your definition of freedom?
My definition of freedom is being able to have and use discipline
Okay.
because I don't think I'm actually, I know I'm not the smartest one in most of the rooms I'm in. I'm not necessarily the one with the best managerial skills or bedside manner at times because I'm quite blunt. But the one thing I've heard my whole life over and over again in a good way and a bad way is that you're so disciplined. You're so disciplined or you're so serious. And I am very disciplined. I eat the same thing for breakfast every morning. I have all of my clothes that I'm going to wear mapped out for the whole week on Sunday. I set all that up. Everything's set up, right? I'm very disciplined. A lot of that comes from my martial arts background. I'm not the one that made up the saying, but there's that saying that discipline leads to freedom. But by being that disciplined, you make different decisions. And somebody that wants to be wealthy, wealthy is not a big exit. Wealth is spending and living at a place financially less than what you're earning. That then you're relaxed, you're wealthy, but that requires discipline. And it requires discipline to say no to things, to say no to events, obligations, and everything else. I say no all the time.
Mm.
And I'm honest with it. People are like, oh, can you come to this event? And I'll say no. And they're like, oh, you can't. I'm like, no, I don't want to. It doesn't fit with what I'm focusing on right now.
Yeah.
Like but it's the truth. So I would say my definition of freedom is being able to consistently use and employ discipline, the muscle of
Nice.
discipline.
Nice. I love it. Fantastic. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
I've got a website, which is saudjuman.com. So you can check me out there. I'm not really on social media other than LinkedIn. I'm making a profile there. So my LinkedIn is at Saud Juman. And outside of those 2 platforms, usually people will interface with me to find out about coaching. I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching anymore because I've pushed a lot of my time into our new venture and
Yeah.
ventures. However, I do a small group coaching program for people that are actually trying to exit.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being on today. You're just a wonderful guest to have. I just love your philosophy and what you do, man.
My pleasure. And I'm very honored to be on your show and had a lot of fun.
Thank you. Folks, as always, we do this twice a week. We bring on wonderful people like him to talk more about their lives and what they've done and their expertise. Make sure that if you like this, give us a 5-star rating, share this with somebody else, share this with a friend that is considering an exit from their business. And we are here to help out wherever we can. So thanks a lot. And we will see you guys back here the next time.